14.5 hours of isolation. The interrogation that changed American history. Imagine you are trapped inside a cold, dimly lit interrogation room. The police have been grilling you for hours without a break. Just outside that heavy door, your lawyer is desperately demanding to see you. But the police look you in the eye and lie. Your lawyer doesn't want to see you. He went home. What do you do? This was the terrifying reality for 22-year-old Danny Escobedo in Chicago, 1960. He was subjected to a brutal 14.5-hour interrogation. He asked for his lawyer dozens of times. His lawyer was actively trying to enter the room, and the two even locked eyes briefly through a cracked door before the police slammed it shut. Exhausted, terrified, and completely isolated, Danny finally made one fatal statement. That single sentence not only sealed his fate, it triggered a legal earthquake that forced every cop show in history to adopt the famous line, "You have the right to remain silent." This is the story of Escobedo v. Illinois, the case that stripped the police of their greatest weapon and rewrote the rules of American justice. Our story begins on the night of January 19, 1960. A gunshot rings out on the streets of Chicago. The victim was Manuel Valtierra, the brother-in-law of a 22-year-old Mexican-American named Danny Escobedo. Manuel had a history of domestic violence against Danny's sister. The animosity between the two men was no secret. Within 24 hours, police arrested Danny. During that first interrogation, he held his ground. He said absolutely nothing. His attorney acted fast, securing his release on a writ of habeas corpus by the very next morning. If the story ended there, it would have been just another unsolved homicide buried in the Chicago archives. But 10 days later, a co-suspect named Benedict DiGirolando was picked up. Desperate to save his own skin, DiGirolando pointed the finger straight at Danny. He told police that Escobedo had fired the fatal shots himself because Valtierra had been abusing Danny's sister for years. That changed everything. On the night of January 30th, police moved in again. They picked Danny up and brought him back to the precinct. This time, the tactics were different. Almost immediately, Danny's attorney Warren Wolfson caught wind of the arrest and rushed to the station. What followed was a scene of pure psychological warfare playing out on two sides of the same wall. Inside the room, Danny kept demanding, "I want my lawyer. I won't say a word without him." The officers told him, "Your lawyer left. He doesn't want to talk to you." Outside the room, Wolfson was knocking on every door, citing statutes, demanding access to his client. The officers held the line. "The interrogation isn't finished. You can't go in." At one point during a brief transfer down the hallway, Danny and his lawyer actually saw each other. Danny called out his name. Wolfson managed to shout back just 4 words. "Danny, keep your mouth shut," before officers shoved Danny back into the room and slammed the door. The interrogation continued for 14.5 hours. Under the crushing weight of exhaustion, isolation, and deception, Danny's defenses finally broke. Trying to shift the blame onto DiGirolando, he blurted out the words he believed would save him. "I didn't shoot him. DiGirolando did it. I was there. I saw him do it." He thought he was clearing his name. He had just destroyed himself. In criminal law, what Danny said was not a full confession, but it was a fatal admission. By saying he was present at the scene, Danny legally placed himself inside the murder plot. Under Illinois law at the time, being an accomplice to murder carried the same punishment as pulling the trigger. Armed with that statement, the prosecution secured a conviction. Danny Escobedo was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but Danny refused to back down. He appealed all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The question before the court was simple in words, but enormous in consequence. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to counsel. But when exactly does that right begin? Does it only activate when you are formally charged in a courtroom? Or does it protect you the moment the police lock you in a room and target you as a suspect? In 1964, in a razor-thin 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court gave its answer. Justice Arthur Goldberg wrote for the majority. His logic was precise. By the time Danny was sitting in that interrogation room, the police were no longer conducting a general investigation. They had a specific suspect, a specific goal. They were not gathering information. They were building a case. And the moment that shift happens, the adversarial process begins. The moment it begins, the accused has the right to counsel. Because that right was denied, every word Danny said in that room was thrown out. The conviction was overturned. Danny Escobedo walked out of prison a free man. The ruling detonated a firestorm. Critics accused the Supreme Court of letting a murderer walk free on a procedural technicality. Law enforcement agencies warned it would cripple their ability to solve crimes. Civil libertarians called it one of the most important victories for human rights in American legal history. Both sides were right about one thing. The ruling changed everything. Just 2 years later, in 1966, the Supreme Court built directly on the foundation laid by Escobedo. In Miranda v. Arizona, the court went further, ruling that before any custodial interrogation begins, police must inform suspects of their right to remain silent and their right to an attorney. That requirement became the Miranda warning. 5 words now burned into the DNA of American culture. You have the right to remain silent. Every time you hear those words in a film, a TV show, a podcast, a news report, you are hearing the echo of Danny Escobedo in that interrogation room in Chicago, asking for his lawyer and being told no. But history did not end there. And this is the part that makes this case genuinely complicated. After the Supreme Court freed him, Danny Escobedo went on to receive 12 felony convictions, drug charges, charges of taking indecent liberties with children. He eventually pleaded guilty to attempted murder and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. The man whose name is inscribed in every constitutional law textbook. The man the Supreme Court went to war to protect. He did not use that second chance well. And yet, here is what that fact cannot change. The Constitution does not exist to reward good people. It exists to constrain government power. It protects the guilty and the innocent alike. Because a system that has the discretion to decide who deserves rights is a system that will eventually turn those rights into a weapon against anyone it chooses. Justice Goldberg understood this. He wrote that no system worth preserving should have to fear that if an accused is permitted to consult with a lawyer, he will become aware of his rights and exercise them. Read that again slowly. A justice of the Supreme Court had to write that into law, because the argument on the other side, the prevailing argument in 1960, was that giving a suspect access to their lawyer would make the police's job harder. And yes, it would have, because a lawyer would have told Danny Escobedo exactly 4 words, the same 4 words Wolfson shouted through a closing door in a hallway for one brief second before it was too late. Keep your mouth shut. The man this ruling was built to protect went on to commit 12 more crimes. Does that change anything for you? Let me know in the comments. If this case made you think, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The next case file drops soon.